7 p.m. We'll call to order the regular monthly meeting of the Helotes Economic Development Corporation. Do we have any citizens to be heard?
No, Mr. President.
Okay, no citizens to be heard. Items 3 and 4 are the consent agenda: approval of the regular minutes of the November 14th meeting and approval of the EDC fiscal year ending 2019 revenue expenditure balance sheet and encumbrance reports dated January 8th. Does anybody have any questions on either one of those two?
No.
Could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
To approve.
I'll second.
Motion to approve, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 5 is discussion of an action on updates to the EDC strategic work plan. Could I have a motion to discuss, please?
Motion to discuss.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
That's not too quick.
What do you think the best way to do this, guys? Just go through what we have and see what changes we want to make and additions we want to do as we go along?
Yeah, I would, go in goal by goal and see if there's any additions or any subtractions.
Goal 1 is develop industry targets. Enlist the assistance of organizations to define desirability, industry and business types in Helotes. We've done some work on this. We've got a definition of Class A office space, and what we'll probably get would be a modified Class A office space. Class A office space is more a metropolitan phenomenon and what we're going to be able to support probably. If you give a little update on what we have in process from this past year, Glenn.
As far as development on Class A, or?
Right, what we've done to accomplish these goals.
I can go off of what I have in memory. I know we made a presentation last, when was that, November, I guess was our last meeting. I did not bring that summary with me tonight. But we do have the definition of Class A, B, and C office space, which typically accepted in each of those categories. Trying to work right now on finding someone to do the capacity analysis on what Helotes can support as far as square footage. We've actually already made a little bit of progress on getting Class A office space. We have 2 projects that should be breaking ground this year. One of them is, it's owner occupied. They're currently operating inside of San Antonio, but they wanted to have kind of a hill country look and have more of a campus feel. They'll do a phase 1 project, plan on hiring 50 employees, and then potentially a phase 2 and 3 later on. And then we just met with a local architect that's looking to expand his office and may build extra office space to lease out. And we have identified, I know under projects, there's identified speculative office space developers. We do have that completed. I think one of the next steps for us, especially with the addition of the water and sewer line down Bandera Road from Circle A to Scenic Loop, would be to work with our engineering consultant to create site plans once we get the capacity analysis and try to promote what type of commercial development we're looking for or office development.
But as far as refining incentive policies to attract desirable industry and business types, that's more of a joint venture with the city for what we can offer to individuals coming into the city. And Rick does that too, so we've got pretty good coordination on that. Should we change the projects on this if we're going to keep it in here to update it to what we want to do this year since the sewer line's now incomplete?
What is your I think priority.
Are we supposed to be working on this right now? or have time to think about it and come back to it? Because I just don't have enough time to put, I need some study time to think about it.
We can definitely bring it back.
We
Just
can just have
discuss it all and
discussion tonight and
Okay,
proposed action and come back at the next meeting
okay,
and finalize the plan.
yeah. I'd like to think about it a little bit more, but yes,
So does goal 1 tie into the bids on the next section in the binder? Are those the consultants referenced in goal 1?
not for that.
No?
So-
Okay.
So goal one, and that's something I was going to bring up too later, is geared really towards office and not looking at other types of mixed-use entertainment, other types of development. So we may want to either consider expanding goal one or adding another goal to focus on other types of development. I would say under priority one in projects, that's complete. There's no further action needed at this time. The incentive policy is always a fluid process, and our incentives are, I would say, dynamic. We can tailor it to the user and their needs. In priority three, there's still continued work that needs to happen, obviously, on continued expansion, marketing for the office space and developers.
Well, we could add on to, change that to not just be directed at Class A office space, but add entertainment and, I don't know, we've been talking about maybe trying to get a grocery store in entertainment and a couple of other types of industry, not industry, but business that we would like to
Right.
come into the city and still have it under, change it from, we don't need to call it develop industry targets, to come up with a format on that for the next meeting and change that to develop,
who's meeting with the developers?
Typically, it's either myself or Rick.
Or the consultants that we did have at one time.
we can add some things like the site plans you were talking about for Bandera Road, since we've got the sewer line down there.
Correct.
That was, make that property a lot more, that's now actually usable to some of the larger businesses where in the past it was not feasible without the sewer and water. So we need to do a further definition of types of business in Helotes, can add entertainment. And what else what would you call grocery store?
It falls under retail development.
Just
Well, I know Ken Dempsey, he had a waiting list for his, and they were things like coffee shops and boutiques and that sort of thing. So I think we ought to also include that sector.
Well,
We've
that
got
would-
office buildings sitting vacant.
entertainment, retail, restaurants would also be in there.
Yes, his sandwich shop is taken off. It's
Oh, I know,
packed,
it's wonderful.
and it's delicious.
And
Yeah,
so
it's
is
doing-
Golden
seems to be
Harvest.
doing well.
It's packed.
It's wonderful.
It's great.
Okay, Rick and Glenn and I will work on fleshing that out for the next meeting. Have some more specific types in there and ideas of how to attract those to the area. Item goal 2 is the gateway signage. We're still, I guess, waiting on TxDOT on that for input as to whether they would allow it to be in the median or not with their construction projects they have going on.
Yeah, they requested that we wait until the construction was completed at the realignment. Now that that's relatively complete, although they have some outstanding items that are still being completed, we can proceed with TxDOT at this time to see whether they would entertain additional monuments in their right-of-way. Again, the issue was that we at one time used up our quota, if you will, on monument signs for the Old Town Helotes Special District, because all of those are located within TxDOT right-of-way. The individual that was over right-of-way management that was there during the Old Town project is no longer there. And so I think they're a little bit more amenable to working with the city on additional gateway signage. I did speak with Jonathan Bean and Clayton Rips on the utilizing the signage, concrete signage poles that they're building for the new Highway 16, Loop 1604 realignment project. If you notice, there's huge concrete pylons on both sides of the roads. And they said that TxDOT would not allow additional signage on those pylons, which is, in my opinion, unfortunate, because it would have been a relatively simple sign that we could have placed on there saying, "Welcome to Helotes," or something along those lines.
What was
But
their reasoning?
they were not engineered to house anything but TxDOT signs. So basically it was, they just didn't want to do it.
In other words, they didn't want it, right?
So, but at this time, I still think it would be preferable to place something within TxDOT right-of-way rather than on private property.
Just make it bigger than the text top sign, put it in front of it. Okay.
Just for longevity, in the sense, once you enter into an agreement with TxDOT on utilizing their right-of-way, they're not apt to try to take that away, whereas a private property owner, when they sell, it could be complicated to whomever they sell in the future. So we could do it through an easement on private property, but I still think utilizing TxDOT right-of-way is probably the best way to go. So we will proceed with meeting with TxDOT to see what areas are available and whether they will allow us to proceed in that. At that time, once we have identified areas, then it's going to be up to the EDC to hire, they're going to require engineered plans, especially within their right-of-way, to hire a sign contractor to design signage, and then we have to talk about funding and all of those sorts of things. But
Now, that's another issue I had with it. I don't really feel that this is an EDC issue.
okay.
The gateway sign, I'd like to see if we could approach city council to do a joint venture on that on the cost, and I don't mind helping them help get it designed and help build it, but I think we should split the cost with city council for the gateway signs.
And and we can approach them at that time to see whether that's doable. I will say that the next step is figuring out whether TxDOT is going to allow it and where they would allow it. That's not going to require any expenditure of monies, and so we'll proceed in that fashion.
Right.
Rick, is there enough, in the median, is there enough space between the north-south bound lanes to put a monument sign in?
TxDOT has been hesitant to allow anything in the center median.
Right.
They did allow Leon Valley to do that. However, there was some agreement that they had. I think Leon Valley gave up something and they or funded part of the project or something along those lines. But generally speaking, they don't allow anything in the median. Again, we can approach them and ask about that possibility, but at this time, I would say it's probably not a likely possibility.
Somebody will wind up hitting it anyway.
Only way you might get it done is if they were doing a construction project where they're actually constructing a median and had some lighting in the median already.
Yeah.
If they're constructing a permanent median, you might be able to get a single pole built like the light structure is put up with the sign on it, but other than that, they're not gonna let you put a freestanding structure in the center median.
And that was what Leon Valley did. They entered into an agreement, and Leon Valley paid for part of that construction project. And so as a part of that, they authorized them to put that pole or the sign in the middle of in the median.
We don't have any additional projects coming up, I don't think, in the near term on the north side of Helotes on 16. It's gonna be a few years before they do anything more out that way, and we're probably through with this project between 1604 and Helotes. When they finish that, on anything's gonna be done there too.
So I would plan on having it on either side of the highway, not in the median at this time. But we can certainly ask.
Okay,
I had envisions of a very nice-looking, landscape sign, you know, welcome to the hill country or gateway to the hill country. But obviously, that doesn't sound like that's going to be feasible.
It could be on the side. That could still happen on the side.
But we're talking now about an elevated sign, I
Can't
assume.
have an elevated sign.
Yeah, again, the option to have a monument sign on either side of the road is possible, as long as TxDOT will allow us to have more than the 4 or 5 signs that we already have for Old Town, for the Old Town District. I don't think that's the issue. The issue is whether you can put it in the median itself and how many they will allow us on top of what we already have.
I guess we need to start thinking about what we want on that sign. That's a good,
We've got plenty of time to do
Yeah,
that
we
before we
do.
get any answer out of
But I don't want it to come up to the last minute and say, what's our signage look like?
Let's decide tonight.
Yeah. Because Gateway to the Hill Country is a great thing. Who's in charge of lights? I mean, like, street lights?
For which entity?
As I turn to come up to here, there, from, it's in back of the Burger King and back of the grocery store, it's dark.
On FM 1560 or on?
1560 to come to this road.
That would be a TxDOT
A TxDOT.
issue. Yeah, and we could
Oh,
request that
it's
they put
dark.
additional sign, or additional lighting.
As I turned, I just went, I don't even know where the lane
It's a
is.
little complicated out there.
It's dark, and I thought, oh
Yeah,
no,
it
that
would
was
help
not
with
fun.
Help with a street light or two there.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know where the lane was, and I said, well, I'll just go as far over right as I can and hope I don't hit anything. Yeah.
We'll inquire with them.
Thank you.
Okay, goal 3 is external marketing and communication plan. That is a lot of potential information and change there, depending on what way we want to go with it. Projects.
Could I ask what social media is used to promote development opportunities?
We utilize Facebook. We have 3 different platforms. We have one for the EDC, we have one for the city, and we have one for Shop Helotes. All 3 of those either individually or collectively utilize Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, I'm missing something, YouTube, and then we are starting to look at for HR LinkedIn as well. But
Okay.
That kind of is your area, isn't it, Matthew?
Yes, I mean, if you got questions, go ahead and shoot them out, but Glenn and I spoke a little bit about that, and he gave me some history about, when Giles Parscale came over and solicited the city for a contract, and, his recommendation on EDC having its own web property versus Shop Helotes at the time. And so, from the history that I got right now, looking at the minutes and from what Glenn filled me in on, until you get a critical mass, social media is just going to be one of those things where for us, it's going to, sit there unless there's a hardcore interested party that, that searches out their leads only on social media, which is very unlikely because most of the developers have their own networks and their own, basically their own networks to call on, whomever's in that network. Long-term, though, you get to a point where there's a critical mass, and then you have so much interest and so much notoriety that the content being cross-published now between the city, on behalf of the EDC and all the different events that we have, and anything that trickles over from Shop Helotes, you get this building effect so that down the road you have a history of content, quote unquote, which people look for activity on sites. And then you never know when you find a large firm from Houston that's looking to develop in town. The executive more than likely is not going to be trolling Facebook or Instagram, but whoever's trying to get a bonus for that year might use it as a tool. So, I mean, there's nothing that prohibits it. It's not necessarily a focus, and again, social media, and any of these marketing tools, they're just one tactic you can use. You know, your goal is always to get to an integrated marketing campaign where you use everything possible. But it gets refined, it depends on your organization, it depends on your goals, it depends on, you know, who's receiving your message. And that changes over time, but you always have the goal of using everything, especially when it's free, everything you can, and then, you know, as Helotes grows and we can afford larger marketing agencies that have more robust analytics tools that can pull in your geofencing data, that can combine and correlate and analyze almost immediately your analytics data, and then, you know, start surveying get some traditional marketing going with surveys and interviews and, well, audits with, you know, the business owners. You combine that together and you can refine external marketing communication. So we call it strategic communications plan. And it's a lot more. It's usually like 10 pages for almost any organization, like even a small mom and pop shop. So from what I've seen so far, yeah, there's easy access to it because I can easily search in Google, and all the search engines are pretty well set up for that. They know that you're looking for a municipality. They know the difference between, you know, a bail bondsman and you know, the police department here. So, you know, the software works. Geo-tracking data, Glenn and I discussed some of the stuff that he saw from one of the vendors in intelligible formats like Microsoft Excel. You're going to get data, but then again, you know, I have tons of data, and once a month at this point, I'll go in there and manually look at somebody's analytics if I see an anomaly. More often than not, it's subcontracted to a vendor or it's condensed in a report that I see. But yeah, so geo-tracking data would realistically fall into that area because until you know, until you have a swath of data that's, you know, at least 18 months, you're not really going to know what you're looking at.
Okay.
You're not going to see seasonality. You're not going to see different patterns. You're not going to account for ingress and egress. Medina Lake's filled now. I mean, there's so many factors that the data is great, but you still have to do the analysis behind it to figure out why. There's always that question, why? Because then if you put resources into a decision backed by an anomaly because of
Government shutdown.
yeah, something like that, then you got to go back to the drawing board the next round.
Right. Affects the tree ring.
And, you know, I really do think the websites are user-friendly for what I would be looking for if I wanted to develop. Everything can always be improved, but that takes, now you get to the point where once you get, you know, a user-friendly platform that provides the information that you're looking for easily in the format that I see, which is, you know, 8th grade reading level, which is the goal because people have limited amount of time, then we get nitpicky. And that gets a little bit more complicated because then we'd have to interview vendors and see what tools they bring to the table and, you know, match that with the goals that we want to produce. So that way we're not just letting them go off and do whatever they want, but it's matched to a goal because they could pitch us hypothetically. You know, we got social media in here. They know we got a website. There's a lot of digital possibilities. So if they pitch us a tool that, you know, sounds like it's going to solve all of our problems, it's probably too good to be true. If they come up and they say, we have a tool that can correlate your geo-tracking data with the analytics on all your websites, so between the city's website, the EDC website, Shop Helotes, great, you know, because that gives us a better, more concise picture to pull out, especially cross-platform analytics. So a good example is if you're searching for a brick and mortar, more often than not, people are going to use their phone. If your air conditioning goes out and you're cold or you're hot, you're going to use your phone. You're going to call the first person, and the first person who answers is probably going to get, you know, the HVAC company is going to be coming over. if you're gonna spend $30,000 on a Trane air conditioner, you're probably gonna take it to a tablet or a desk, or a laptop and do some research. So when we have cross-published information right now, with all the different organizations, it's gonna be hard to parse out where our traffic is coming from. Maybe it just bled over from somebody trolling around, the city's website because they saw, movie night was coming out, and they just started clicking on links. So the data is gonna be important when it comes to, external communication, in that scope of sense. Most everything else is really gonna be, traditional marketing. Because we're gonna, at the core right now, from what I see, and if anybody disagrees, I think the target market has an established network that, knows that they can go to some sort of EDC, that they know that there's staff behind it, and that, it's more, a slightly traditional networking model. And this would just be in support of that for that time now when they want more information, or in the future when, some analyst is sitting at a computer and wants a bonus and found a good lead on one of our platforms. And let me know if I talk too much, because I tend to go off. It's like, I can go off until you say on tangents, so.
I think if we have a list of the goals that we're looking for, I think that would help determine what that strategy should look like and be. What are the goals? What are we trying to achieve? Do we have a list of that?
No, but that's something we need to talk about and think about.
Right.
These are kind of the things that are like, let's get that just rolling around in our brains to think
If we
about
could
what
s-
could be
If
next.
we could start a document just with the foundation of what are some of those goals, and we can get a little bit more in depth, and I think that'll help determine as to what is the strategic path that we want to take then. Who are going to be the players that we would want to
Yeah.
bring in from a vendor perspective? And what are the
Exactly.
technologies and tools that we would need to utilize in order to make
Yeah,
that come to fruition?
what's available.
Yeah.
Formalize what we have to where it's more specific right now with the Shop a Lotus, EDC, and the city, and then look at that and see what direction we need to go. Patrick's got some good ideas on ways to go with this too. We need
Excellent.
to see what we need to change on what we're doing, or more likely what we need to add to it to make it more effective and more accessible to the people we want to see it. And that's something I don't know much anything about, but these two guys know a lot about it.
That's great.
Excellent. Go ahead.
Let's formalize where we are on that for the next meeting, and y'all be thinking about it, and we'll get you a copy of it when we get it formalized, so you can look at it and
Yeah.
bring it back to the next meeting.
So we'll start with the foundation, and then we can take it from there. We can apply some additional research and see what the outcome is.
I guess we could look at other cities and see what they're using, like Houston,
If it's available.
if they have anything. Yeah. Anything,
And we probably also want to look at cities that are our size too. I think
Yeah, well,
that's probably
yeah.
a little bit more realistic as opposed to looking at somebody
Right.
like Houston or New York or even San Antonio.
and Katie.
San Antonio's out there in their marketing, trying to get
Well,
more
you
and
could
more
look at,
companies
if
to
you want to do
relocate
that, you can
Oh, no.
look at cities like Round Rock and
Archaic.
some of the other cities that are really growing that are suburbs to metropolitan areas. And they've got, Round Rock's a lot bigger town, and they have a lot more resources than we do.
I'll look at that one.
And being right there on I-35, they've got a lot more traffic and a lot more development, but
Huge.
they may have some things they're doing that we could use too and transfer over
They've
here.
got that guy Michael Dell up there too, so.
Yeah.
Well, in Patrick,
Exactly.
Cibolo is very similar to what we basically
Yeah.
are. It was a little
But,
small
but
little
looking at that
town.
small city that is right outside a major city, San Antonio,
That's right.
who else is comparable, and then what are they doing, and have they succeeded in whatever it is that they did, if they have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what
I-
tools they're using.
I also wanted to bring up, I think we all realize how important the EDC website is. And remember, we're all, except for Pat and Catherine, we're all new. Anyway, I started reviewing the website, and of course, being a Realtor, the first thing I went to was available properties. And I noticed that none of Mifey Moore's properties are on there, even though they've got for sale signs. Then I also know Ken Dempsey has indicated that his remaining center could be available. So have Bob and Judy Buck said the same thing about their Riggs Road property. And there are others in our area. You know, really, Glenn, what I would like to see, you know, and again, we're all new. Would it be possible to provide a chronological weekly report of businesses and property owners that you have contacted?
I mean, I think it's possible.
Pardon me.
It
You know,
would
what I
help
was
us-
telling, you know, Matthew the other day when we visited, on any given day, you know, this department is one person, myself. So I can be doing 10 to 15 different things. When we go to a conference, you know, spend 2 weeks preparing to go to a conference, 3 days at the conference, come back, spend another week following up. So then, you know, it's preparing for an EDC meeting, getting agendas, and,
Well, but if we
you know,
just
it
have,
bounces around.
if, you know, so we could know, it'll give us a better idea of how the board is working, how you are working.
And that's kind of what the quarterly updates are for, was my understanding. Because we develop a strategic work plan, we present a report to the board and then to city council every quarter on the progress either myself or Rick, the EDC, has made to achieve those.
But again, we are new,
Right.
Glenn, that's what
Right.
I'm referring to. And so we would like to have, it would help us understand the workings and goals and that sort of thing. And that's important, particularly while we are becoming adjusted. So if you could, you know, just a chronological weekly report, if you don't do something on Tuesday, you don't reach out to someone on Tuesday or whatever that it is, then, you know, Tuesday wouldn't be included.
Well, I got a question to kind of back up there. I've been on the board, 6 months now? My big question is, what do we do between monthly meetings? And like you said, you're a busy man, and I don't want to sit here and volunteer for a 7-hour-a-day job. But if you have a list of stuff that needs to be done, that can be done in a timely manner, like in a day or 2 days or something like that, or tracked down, then publishing it in-house on the internet or on a website or whatever, you know, one of us might volunteer to do a specific job and get one out of your way. And if something's backing up on you, I guess that's why we volunteer in the first place, to help a little bit. But like I said, I'm to the point, I'm not for those 8-hour volunteer jobs. I got too many of them now. But if we could help out in our expertise of tracking something down, or researching stuff, I mean, I do that all day long on the internet, but researching something for you or for the EDC, I'm open to that suggestion.
So I took down a
Me too.
to-do for myself right now, which
What's
is, by the next meeting, is to look at comparable cities or towns that are outside larger
Right,
cities.
That's a
And
great
what was
idea.
their marketing plan? And then what I could do is get the findings, collect them, email it back to the office, and then we can distribute it before the meeting. So hopefully I'll have that in the next 2 to 3 weeks,
Oh, that'd be great.
so.
What
Hopefully
what you're
alleviate.
suggesting, Stevie, is what basically is called a dashboard. The company I work for just went to that, and it spends about 6 or 8 hours a week of wasted time on the salesman's part trying to fill out the reports instead of doing anything.
Well, that's not what I'm referring to at all. I think all of us would like to know. We're learning the workings of the committee, and
Well, Glenn, unless he goes into detail on what he talks about, just to say he met with somebody or went by and saw business, doesn't tell you anything about what he's doing.
yes, it does. It most certainly does, Pat. We know the type of business that he's reaching out to. The we know the property owners that are open to selling their commercial properties?
We're working on that. We keep a pretty good list of that. Now, MIFE stuff, MIFE's MIFE. You're not gonna get anywhere with her. She's got it so overpriced, nobody's gonna buy it to start with.
I mean, I can address the one issue regarding commercial properties that you did bring up and how they're not on the EDC website. We contract with CoStar, and most of those property owners do not pay to have their properties listed,
Right.
and that's why they don't appear. So CoStar is a plug-in to the website. So you'll see more Riata, CBRE, some of the larger commercial tracts that do have several properties here in Helotes. And there's no way to add that data in with CoStar. You have to be a paid member.
Okay, I understand something else now.
Yeah, that's,
So I'm evaluating other vendors so we can try to expand that. But Xceligent was an awesome platform for anybody that in the commercial industry. CoStar sued them into oblivion, so they went out of business, and they're the only game in town for the
And we
most
can't
part.
put that on our website? I mean,
CoStar's on our website, but not everyone. So someone like MIFE uses a small local broker. They don't pay license fees to CoStar to do their property listings. They're going the old-fashioned networks, whatever, trying to promote their property.
okay, I understand.
One thing was mentioned about Pat was, what kind of businesses are we looking for? Pat was suggesting more chicken places, but I think we've got enough of those. If we knew what kind of businesses we're looking for, like another small grocery store, that's the first time I've heard of that.
No, we've been talking about that.
Okay, well,
For a
6
year.
months, okay. But a list like that, some kind of target list that would, you know, make you think of something and develop.
So that's where all the statistics come in. So based on any of the research
know
that we
that.
look at in comparable markets, that's what's going to come back. And we're going to look to see what, so for example, if we want to market out, what's the average household income? That's going to attract business to Helotes because they're going to see that there's a certain dollar value. They're going to say, wow, that's equal to Alamo Heights.
Well, yeah,
So why
because
would I
our-
open up there when I can open up here? So, and
we
the business
already
owners are smart
have a
enough.
lot of that data.
We have that.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's just part of the research that's going to come out of this. I'd be more interested in finding out, as opposed to finding out who Glenn calls, I'd be more interested as to who calls us. Who's attracted to the city of Helotes.
And oftentimes, if I create reports like that, it's going to be redacted heavily. So, I mean, you see, call developer. You're not going to know who, what, when, anything. Partly because the prospect doesn't want anyone to know they're looking at the market.
Yeah, that's-
Prices
that's-
will go up if they find out who.
Yeah.
You have to sign confidentiality agreements with most anybody that's seriously looking at it. And
got
we don't
NDAs in
even,
place.
it's not even divulged to the board until we get to an approval
Right.
stage. So it can't get out that they're looking at the property. You've dealt with those
Oh,
before
yeah,
too, quite a few times.
Yes, that's true.
Well, we can look at that, see if we can come up with refine that and come up with something that actually means something. Glenn and I, and Rick too, if you want to get involved in it, can look at that and see if we can come up with something on a more timely report of what the staff, i.e. Glenn, is actually doing on a day-to-day basis. We'll look at that too, and I don't know that
My
that's
emails.
a goal for, it's something we can do. It's not necessarily anything that goes in the goals. Goal 4, with this, we've got enough data coming back in for the next meeting. If y'all get some data back to that, if you want to look at something on it too, anything you come up with, Matthew, and forward it to Glenn before the next meeting. We'll see if we can get some of that into a more refined status where we actually have something we can put specifically in the plan that's not so generalized.
Okay.
The visitor center, we're kind of still, I don't know, that one is pretty tough. The goal initially was to purchase a piece of property and build a building and have participation by the Chamber and Historical Society and have a visitor center. But you're talking about probably $2 million before you get through doing that, and that's not a good expenditure of EDC money. That's not gonna draw businesses into the community. Now, it's possible we have a visitor center of sort in the EDC office over in the shopping center. We've got an area there where we're putting more brochures and all the information out in the front, and we have a desk in there for the Chamber of Commerce now, and Glenn's office in there. That's, what, do we got a 2-year lease on that, or 3?
Did a 3-year.
We got a 3-year lease on that piece of property. I think we'll be ready to move to something else when that's done, but if we want to try to build something, I don't know that that's going to be feasible. There are supposedly, if you can word it correctly, you might be able to get some grant money to help pay for part of it. I don't know how much.
Working on. Yeah, Cindy is working on.
Cynthia's working on
On a
that.
grant.
If you could come up with enough grant money to go into it and make it where you have some, has to have some educational benefit to it. Probably a good example is the Museum of the, was it Museum of the West in Abilene? It's like a visitor center, and it has a holographic displays of all the history of the area. It's really nicely done, and it's more just a museum than anything else, but it has a visitor center in it.
Grant.
Chamber information, some other things, but that's probably a $5-6 million facility they've got in there. That's a lot bigger town. But I think we could do something of that nature in Old Town if the right property came available, where you'd have enough space to have three offices in there and a display for some, if the Historical Society wants to have a display of some of the historical items from Helotes and stuff about the history of Helotes, you could have that in there too. And split cost with the chamber on it, which we're doing de facto right now in the office space that they have in our building over here. To have something more formalized as the chamber grows, and they'll have more participation in it. Because they'll be more directed at the individual, the families coming in and people looking for residential property probably than commercial property, but we could maybe incorporate all those together. We wouldn't need probably, what, 2,500, 3,000 square feet would be plenty of space. You're looking at $3,000-4,000 a month rent for that would be a lot cheaper than carrying the debt load on $500,000 or $1 million piece of property and offsetting some of it with a little bit of rental income. So we're still working with the Historical Society and the Chamber ongoing on this right now. Glenn can give you a little more detail on where we are on it and what we're doing.
Yeah, we met actually in December, right before the holidays, to try to get an understanding of what the needs of each organization is, what they can contribute. We did talk about funding. Cynthia felt pretty confident that from a museum standpoint that the Historical Society could get grants to fund that. Obviously, you know, the Chamber's growing organization, they're looking for a true visitor center. The EDC, you know, it'd be nice to have office or meeting room space for our organization. We identified internally a couple of properties that might lend itself well for a visitor center, which obviously we cannot disclose. But, and I think Cynthia's working on a resolution from the Historical Society on exactly what they can help with. And that's something that will be going to the chamber as well, just to see how this thing progresses. I mean, you go out there, you get money from private donors. I think we're going to try to work with an architect and an engineer to donate their time to come up with a visual aid. That'd be a great way for us to start raising money on the two private organizations. Eventually, it may come to fruition. I think Pat's right, though, that a project, knowing the property prices right now in Helotes and then the construction cost, it could definitely get $2 million. I mean, it would be nice to get $1.5 million, but
Do the buildings there on Old Bandera in Old Town, do they ever come up for lease or for rent? And I'm thinking of the location where the bicycle shop used to be. The square footage seems to match what we're looking for here. And that would, you know, if we got a good price on a lease or rent, seems to be an area that visitors would want to go to.
Absolutely. 100% agree. They do periodically. Obviously, in the past, the EDC's never been in a position to lease a building like that, which has changed recently. They go quick if they do come on the market. I think the last two buildings weren't even really officially on the market. The deals were done before the tenant ever left. But no, that's definitely something we're exploring.
Yeah, and as we get a little further down the road, we know the property owners on all those properties down there very well, and we can stay in touch with them to see what is gonna be coming up. If something comes up that would work with them before it actually goes on the market.
Absolutely.
Another thought came to mind is the, I don't know, being relatively new, I don't know the name of the development, where all the little shops are that has
That's,
go ahead.
no, go ahead, that's it.
Well, anyway, you know, build a building back there. Or again, maybe the developer would build a building that we could rent or lease. But that's an ideal location in my mind to have such a building, a visitor center.
Several pieces of property down there that would work well. Some that's not developed at this time and some that is, but there's lots of questions involved in that when you start getting down to it. We're not at the point to be able to actually jump off and do that right now. But we are pursuing it.
So in terms of a timeline, when I'm looking at the 2019 to 2020, does that shift at all? Or is the ultimate end goal by 2020?
I think it shifts.
Okay.
And it's all dependent on, so a 2020 goal could be if we found a property that we can lease at a reasonable rate to accommodate all this. If we don't, then it definitely pushes more long-term if we have to consider building.
'Cause what I just heard in the discussion here is, we only got priority one, where we broke out the marketing into three priorities. And if we're looking at expensing out, obviously, you start putting foundation down and plumbing, and so that could be a little expensive, even with the MOUs with other organizations. Because it sounds like it could be an opportunistic goal, if that, like, what we heard, these properties come up for lease, and we hear about it before somebody else does, or if, by way of securing funding, and Cynthia is Historical Society? Okay.
Yes,
And
on
with
the city
chamber-
council.
Okay. Oh, wow. And then, there's also, crowdfunding options too. You never know how many people are, wanting to do good with $50 and how many, people want to donate $50. So, there's definitely some, I think, opportunities. I'm not comfortable looking at a building, without scoping it out a little bit more, and getting some, and I understand that's probably gonna change, whether it's sooner or later, if the timeline shifts. But I think maybe, what I can do to help out is, pass around to the board. I mean, are we allowed to do that, email each other? Or is that open meetings issue with the emails? Okay.
You're not allowed to.
So some of the ideas that I would add to,
So
go
you
forward.
are.
Send that to me.
Send that to you first? Okay.
Yeah, you can
Alright.
send it to staff and then they can distribute it, but don't email amongst yourselves.
Okay. All right, because
Oh,
we're
we
all
gotta
on that email
stop
line.
that. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
They want to do reply all, so, all right.
We'll stop it now.
Because I think those are good ideas. It's just, one of those things
Group
where,
emails.
The FBI will come in, and find us.
So like, for example, when I see secure funding at the end, just to give like an idea of what I'm thinking about, that to me would be like a funding plan, like priority, and then list out all the opportunities and tools that we could leverage.
agree.
And then once that's knocked off, it's knocked off. So that way the one staff EDC isn't, diverting attention, to stuff that needs to, like, an opportunity that comes up and he misses a phone call because he's, handling like, GoFundMe account or something like that,
Right.
where he doesn't
Oh,
need to.
yeah, we can
So
do
that's
that.
kind of my intent with that, breaking this
Yeah,
out a little bit
GoFundMe.
more.
Can
I
the
want one of those.
EDC legally have a GoFundMe account?
Probably not, but
I've never looked into see if anyone's done that, but there's no,
There's no reason you can't accept
Right.
donations. You're a governmental entity.
Just another way for asking for donations.
Yeah,
You
you're a
never know.
nonprofit, you're a nonprofit corporation. I don't see legally why it would be a problem. We could check.
we'll
if
have to
y'all-
ask the mayor one day. But yeah, that's a good idea. I like
A
that.
different approach.
Yes. Brilliant.
And the internal marketing and communications, goal 5, short-term is kind of what Matthew's already reviewed, what we actually have in place and how it's working, and kind of a review of what we were talking about a while ago, isn't it, Matthew?
Sorry, I was finishing my notes, sorry about that.
This is that bird's eye view thing? We don't have that?
Yes, and I was, so when I met with Glenn, I had a few questions I wanted to address before I got to the board meeting. Because there's 2 goals that address marketing. And goal 5, when I'm looking at it, yeah, so if I was to say to a client, we're gonna have internal marketing, we're talking about internal clients, so that's the communications between the corporation's different departments. And so I was kind of confused when I saw a lot's gone on last year, interviewing for the board, reading the bylaws, the minutes, trying to get spun up and all that. And the keyword just didn't stick with me, but it stuck with me earlier this year, the new resident packet. I don't understand that one. Why would we?
The idea when we were going through this, and there was a strategic planning process that brought all of this to fruition, was that there would be an external marketing effort which would go after developers, retailers, the business community outside of Helotes to locate into the city of Helotes. Then there was an internal piece, internal to the corporate city limits, where business retention, visiting businesses, things of that sort would be implemented so that you could maintain the business community here that's already here. So that was the external versus internal.
And so the new resident packet, I'm assuming, would have marketing material with existing businesses, the Chamber of Commerce, similar to the map presentation that we saw, that would support
Things,
the residents?
yes, things of
utilizing?
that sort, in
Okay.
addition to describing to the residents and the business community, the internal to corporate city limits, what exactly the EDC is doing, and what industries or businesses we're trying to target, so that we could stay ahead of residents that would essentially either complain or state that they didn't know what the city was up to, if that makes sense.
It does.
I've always been a little fuzzy on that one. New resident packet to me just means something you give to people that are moving into Helotes.
Yeah, that's my impression.
And that has nothing to do with the EDC, actually. That's a city function.
Yeah, this, again, it was to communicate what, essentially the goals of the EDC and what projects the EDC was working on and what we were doing, so that you would have an informed citizenry out there.
You could do that on a website. Be where the people are, instead of handing out a packet and wasting money on paper.
I agree.
Or is there anything, on top of that, but going digitally though, is there anything prohibiting the EDC from creating our own email database?
No,
Why would you need an email database?
no, you can,
Send a digital copy to whoever's interested.
Privacy laws. Don't want to do that. That's PII.
Explain, please.
So, so any data retention that you have, let's say I maintain your name, address, that's considered personal identifiable information. So there are privacy laws about your retaining that information of whoever it may be. So now you have to protect that data. How are we gonna do that? So what you wanna do is create a website so that they just go to it. You're not maintaining anything, you're not
They
retaining
look
any
and they don't have
information.
to
Yeah,
enter any
you're not retaining
information.
any
Got it.
information whatsoever.
Got it.
So how does that apply to a small business?
Applies to everyone.
So, no, what I'm saying is, so one client that I have has 9,800 and some odd emails. That's never been an issue. Our biggest issue has been can spam. And there's no Texas law that I've seen.
Did they ask for consent?
Yeah, it's double opt-in.
You'd have to ask for consent, so that means you have to hire an attorney to go ahead and have them go ahead and click that box saying, I consent for you to go ahead and retain my email address, and then you have to secure that.
Wait, no, the attorney? Wait,
No, you have to get an attorney to write up that verbiage for that consent in order for them to opt in to go ahead and give you that email address that you're asking for.
it cost me $300 per client per license for that. Copy, paste, and we switch out the names.
How large is your company? We're a city, so we may be looked upon a little bit differently than a small business.
Well, I mean, I.
Well,
still
and
kind-
I will
yeah.
say, there's another caveat to that. Many of those laws exempt municipalities and governmental entities. So we may be exempt from those requirements.
That would be good to
I know
if is the
I know that there are many credit card laws that the cities are exempt from. For example, we charge processing fees all day long. You can't do that if you're a private business, so we would need to look into that. I don't know.
Yeah, if you look at the legislation that's going out there right now, New York State is going through, California's passing something that is similar to GDPR, which means forget, completely forget. In other words, I don't know if you're familiar with the GDPR piece that's going on in Europe, but any European citizen that has, let's say, data here that resides in the United States, they call in, they say wipe it out, and that means wipe it out completely. Those laws apply to the United States, even though those are not United States laws. So every company here in the United States is scrambling, trying to figure out how they can go ahead and adhere to those international laws that apply to anyone that's doing business with a U.S. entity. So that means we have to wipe all of that data out.
Oh, nothing's ever wiped out.
It's an enormous regulatory requirement. It's a compliance nightmare.
Imagine.
So,
So if we're exempt from that, that would be great. We just need to find that out. Then we'd be able to do that.
so
Anyway,
They have a site that they can go look at, and there's a a new resident package on there. They can look at
Yeah,
it.
the
Take it
PDF.
down.
Don't have to respond, enter in any information, just like a typical website. You go look, you get out.
Yeah, they can download it.
now I'm not advocating turning this into where we hire a marketing agency, we go purchase lists, we, get can spam compliant and everything else that apparently is coming up that, the agencies I subcontract for don't even have on their view. All I'm saying is that it's another tool. I don't see it. We already got emails of people that are reaching out to you, for development prospects, things like that. It's just, for marketing, it's one more tool that if you get an email in from Glenn and you see, oh, hey, here's a new resident packet because you signed up for our email distribution list 3 years ago when you lived in Helotes, you moved over to Stone Oak or something like that. It's just another reminder or something like that. So I'm not saying build it out until it's just one of those, if it's feasible, but it sounds like it's probably not going to be, something that wouldn't, because I right now, without knowing and looking at what you're talking about, I wouldn't be on board for hiring legal counsel to research any privacy laws and what that means to a municipally owned corporation.
No, I'm not looking for them to research it. I don't need somebody to research it. I need somebody that's gonna write that consent form for us so that they opt in. That's where you would have legal come in. It's not to find out whether
No,
it's.
I got that, but the legal, so that, for me, because I'm telling you, it's like $300 invoice to an attorney, or a bill that I pay to an attorney, and then I swap out the company name.
But what is the goal with collecting the email addresses anyway? That's where I'm
Because
struggling also.
if we want to, I'm looking at a goal that the previous board has, that a new resident packet was discussed. I understand the internal marketing component. In the strategic planning session, they were talking about actually giving this to residents. As a resident, I'm a business owner, and I suspect there's many more business owners in town. I've never thought about placing my office in Helotes. I don't even know what the opportunities are. And specifically because my first clients lived in Helotes, and asked me to get his ranking in San Antonio for obvious business reasons, and he is a surveyor. So as a digital marketer, I need my address in San Antonio because that's where most of my calls come from. And that's just, the fact it is. So, but there's nothing saying that, somebody who owns a pressure washer, there's an HVAC company, no, plumbing company next to the EDC or anything like that wants to open up their own franchise that isn't a national franchise, that wants to get on an email list because they have an entrepreneurial itch that they might want to scratch, not now, but they want to sign up and get information from it. It's just, again, another tool, another opportunity. But if the hurdle is so high, I mean, then I would withdraw that, say, yeah, address it some other time.
We can research, see if that PII requirement applies to cities.
I mean, I can tell you, to answer your question, we have an internal database of all of these emails. We've used Constant Contact in the past. We have something that goes through our internal website. We haven't used it lately. So, I mean, we have done these things in the past. And they've just kind of, as we've developed our website, we've kind of gotten away from that at this time. Particularly, and also we have now the quarterly magazine that we mail out to everybody. So there wasn't the constant pressure to get the news out about what we're doing via email because, and also we have all of our social media accounts. We have a dedicated person that handles public relations for the city. So we've gone away from that, but that doesn't mean that we can't utilize that tool in the future, assuming we look up these issues.
No, well, that was my only comment, so thank you for the response and the history on that.
I couldn't hear what you said, man.
I said that was my only comment on that, and I just thanked him for his response and the background, the history on that.
This has given us several things to think about.
right.
This has really
Very good.
opened some doors. I like it.
Yep, lots of questions that we can hopefully come up with answers to. Okay, the only other thing we've got more work to do on Goal 5, and we've got internal communication defined now what it means in this. It's just within the city boundaries.
And the other one's for development and real estate.
And it can promote, we had priority 3 on there, promote and encourage day tripping and other forms of tourism. I guess we're working on that, the map
Yeah, what's the status?
to,
Working on maps, working on,
the map would kind of accomplish that more for Old Town than anything else, but it's a starting point.
Well, let me clarify that. Remember, we're doing citywide on this map. I just want to put that out there. We're doing citywide.
Right.
yeah.
Do
We're
you
also
have-
working on promotional videos too.
Do you have a date to come back to us with on the map,
She's sick right now.
on the map?
Not right now. I know we already have an agreement that we sent to her, her attorneys reviewed, and we're just waiting for the signed copy.
Yeah, when she left, we got that information back to her within what, a week or 2 weeks?
It's pretty quick.
So the ball's in her court.
Yeah, right.
And better, priority 2 on this, better communicate the city's commercial growth strategy within the corporate city limits and the ETJ to area residents. It's pretty hard to communicate a growth strategy in ETJ since we have absolutely no control over anything that goes in there except signage. We have no control over that at all, and basically we don't have a lot of control within the city of what type businesses come in. If they fall within planning and zoning requirements for that business category, they can build there whether we think they're an entity we want or not. And you cannot restrict those to any great degree legally you start doing that, you'll end up being sued for it when you start cutting out different businesses from zoning categories. We've examined that several times in the past and worked on it.
Put that on.
So I don't know if there's much we can do with either one of those, just what we've been doing, say, this is the people we're encouraging to come in, and the businesses we'd like to have, but we have very little control. If you read the neighborhood websites, a lot of people think we have a lot more control than we do. Don't seem to understand how the system works.
Yeah, the city has no control over how many chicken places come into the city of Helotes. We
Chicken
can
places
regulate
or banks
restaurant, but we
or
can't
car
regulate
washes.
chicken.
Yeah, no control. Goal 6 was to just evaluate the feasibility of creating a municipal development district. We've been working on that. Y'all have met with SAWS, what, once or twice?
VIA.
VIA, once or twice on that. To do that and get that half-cent sales tax, VIA would have to give up their half-cent sales tax they have in this area.
We met with VIA twice. Glenn did originally by himself, and then we had a larger group of individuals that met with VIA. The meeting actually went quite well, and they said that they would have legal review what steps, if any, they could take to release that area. And it's been months since we had that meeting, and they haven't provided any response to us. We've sent multiple emails to their board members and to their legal counsel, and I have not received a reply at all with regard to that. So,
So would it be feasible to have the attorney look at that and see,
That means no.
since they provide no service in that area, what is their basis for being able to tax for their entity in that area?
well, Bear County in 78 established VIA. And so the voters in Bear County voted it in for the entire Bear County.
Right,
Area.
but we do not have any VIA in Helotes, so we might have legal standing to use that money within the city of Helotes since they provide no service in the area.
Oh, perhaps, yes. I understand your
That might
comment
just be
now.
a way to get them to respond a little.
Yeah, I mean, other than to pressure them with Mayor Schoolcraft or council or some other mechanism, I mean, we just haven't had them respond yet.
Yeah,
They can't not respond forever, I can tell you that. SAWS has tried to do that many times, and that doesn't work. So, my plan is to check up on VIA over the next few weeks to see where they are on this. And if necessary, sometimes getting Frank Garza, our city attorney, involved so that he can speak with their legal counsel, because I know that they both work together at the city of San Antonio, might move
might move it a little faster.
a little faster. Yes, sir.
I don't think it'll accomplish anything past that, but at least we might get a response.
Yeah. Well, it's either they can do it or they can't. And the fact that they haven't come back and said no, maybe I'm being optimistic, but leads me to believe that they probably found a mechanism they might have found a mechanism that they can do it. They just don't want to admit to it.
Right. They wouldn't do that.
Is there an estimate or a solid number on how much money we're talking about?
We have not, well, there would be no way of knowing, because we would have to know what the retail sales are within the extraterritorial jurisdiction, and we have no way of knowing that. We couldn't even request that from the comptroller because we have no jurisdiction in that area.
What's a half cent within the city limits of Helotes a year?
Right now, the EDC gets a half cent. We're generating 1.2 million.
It'd be a sizable amount of money.
That's
It's-
6.5 square miles.
And it may be, it's probably gonna be higher than that, actually, because
Yeah.
then you have Vulcan Materials, you have all the businesses down Braun, Shanefield, Gulm, that would be a part of that, plus everything to the north of us, on Bandera Road, so it may be even more than that.
It would be more than that. That's just a baseline number you could look at.
Yeah. It's a considerable amount of money, which is why we're trying to see whether they'll release that area so that we can have more money for economic development.
That's not pocket change.
Okay, so at this point, what I think we've accomplished is we're going to go back with Glenn and maybe get Rick involved in this too, if he's got time, to flesh out. Matthew's going to get information to Glenn, and Patrick's going to get information to Glenn, and we will do more research on the other areas and flesh this whole thing out where we have a complete plan with more detail at the next meeting that we can look at. If we have, hopefully we'll be at the point then we can make final changes to it and go ahead and pass the strategic plan for the next year, the next meeting. Okay, item 6 is discussion and action on proposals received from a request for qualification, proposal seeking well-qualified licensed commercial brokerage or brokerage firms to conduct business recruitment services within the corporate limits of the city of Helotes. Could I have a motion to discuss item 6, please?
Motion to discuss?
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Rick, do you want to present this?
Yes, sir. The EDC issued a request for qualifications or proposal, depending on how they wanted to submit it. Some time ago, when was it we actually issued that? It was before, way before Christmas.
October, I believe.
It was in, around October of 2018. Upon the expiration of that, we received one submittal or submission, and that was from the Canvas Group, which was included within your packets. Just recently, we received another submittal from Retail Strategies, which was the contractor that we had used prior. I will tell you that both of these submittals are non-responsive to the request for proposal or the request for qualification, because we asked not for a fee-based system, but a percentage-based system, so that as these brokers brought in individual businesses or developments, they would receive a percentage, however that was determined, and we had not yet determined what that would look like, of whether it would be the construction cost, the gross sales, all of those things were on the table. Both companies submitted, instead of looking at it at a fee-based system or percentage-based system, they submitted a annual fee, which is what we have previously dealt with Retail Strategies. The Canvas Group submitted project fees of $30,000 per year, plus travel and expenses not to exceed $2,500 annually. And just recently, Retail Strategies, and again, this is submitted so past the deadline, I'm not sure if we should even look at it, but they submitted $15,000 as an annual lump sum, plus a performance fee of $5,000 per new tenant that locates within the city of Helotes. And they would also give us a complimentary recruitment website, which according to them is a $5,000 value. And they included Burleson, the link to Burleson's website, who utilizes it. It's very, I looked at it today, it's very similar to, it may be a little bit flashier, but it's very similar to the information that we have on our website currently. I'm still of the opinion that we shouldn't go with a lump sum fee base, but rather either a percentage or a monthly fee so that we can cancel at any time. I am opposed to, my recommendation would not be to go with Retail Strategies, if any of them, simply because of the experience that we've had with them over the last 3 years. I will tell you that the Canvas Group has a 2-person firm with Joe Fackel and Bear Burnett. Joe Fackel and Bear Burnett are ex-employees of Retail Strategies. They opted to go out on their own and create a smaller team that could focus, that could provide more personalized service for municipalities. We have had a lot of experience with Joe Fackel and Bear Burnett. I think they're well qualified and very competent. If the board decides to go anywhere, I would recommend to sit down with these individuals and try to see if they'll come up with either a monthly retainer or a fee or percentage-based contract that they would go for.
Yeah, the annual fee basis we had didn't work out too well.
No.
We got hurt.
Our
Heard of
Canvas
that one.
Group is asking for basically what we were paying Retail Strategies.
Yeah. They were at the ICSC conference, and of course, they came to talk to us. There is considerable, I believe there's considerable wiggle room in how they will approach a contract with the city, whether it, again, be on a monthly basis or an annual basis or for whatever. Everything, I think, with them is on the table. They just wanted to make sure that they submitted something in time to meet the deadline of the RFP and the RFQ. But I think it is unusual for businesses like this to do it on a percentage basis, and so they weren't quite sure how to tackle that or present it to the EDC that would be palatable to the EDC. I think really what they want to do is come to the table and have a negotiation, talk about what we want and what we're willing to spend, if anything, and we can go back and forth that way rather than submit a hard and fast number through an RFQ process.
I think under RFQ process, you're allowed to pick an individual and go in and negotiate.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that the EDC is exempt from all purchasing requirements anyway, that's included within state law, so it doesn't, frankly, the EDC is exempted from all purchasing state laws. So so you could select anybody you wanted to and do business with anybody you wanted to. We wanted to do it this way so that it was an open and transparent process and anybody had the ability to bid on it. It was advertised in the San Antonio Business Journal twice, if I recall. It was advertised on our websites. It was advertised through the San Antonio Board of Realtors.
Right,
Go.
it's emailed it out to CCIM and then
They
some
don't
of
know
the.
what CCIM is.
It's a commercial realtor organization, it's the international one, but I sent it to the local chapter. And then sent it to a lot of the major developers that have done projects here in Helotes to see if they would buy it. And that, I think, was kind of our hope, is that we would have a local broker or developer that could bite on this and want to tackle it, but we didn't get any responses.
Well,
Or the other option, I will say, is we can just do nothing and decide to forego this. I mean, but it's really whatever the board, how the board wishes to pursue this.
Now, as I understand, I've been visiting to learn the history and all with former board members. And as I understand, this would be the third, let's say, consulting team that has been hired. Is that correct?
To do this work?
Yes.
No, this would be the second. The first one was Retail Strategies.
Okay.
And so we had a 3-year contract with Retail Strategies where the first year we paid, was it 30, 25, 20?
I think so.
Where the first year we paid 30, the second year we paid 25, and the third year we paid 20 for these types of recruitment services. So this would be the second contract that we would have, not the third.
Okay. Well, that's a lot of money. A lot of money.
For nothing.
And nothing was produced, I understand.
That's right.
So,
Well, nothing, I will say nothing definitive was produced in where you could say Retail Strategies was directly responsible for bringing this entity in or bringing this retailer into a tenant space. That does not mean that and again, I'm not defending Retail Strategies because I think they could have done a better job than they did. But that doesn't mean that Retail Strategies did not provide information, have phone contacts, have them meet with individuals. So they could have facilitated some of this, but there is no hard and fast proof of it. And even Retail Strategies would tell you that they could not prove that there were any cash registers that were ringing directly because of Retail Strategies. So, yeah, it was certainly a lot of money. I just don't want to say that they didn't do anything, but I can't pinpoint exactly what they did. if that makes sense.
I understand, but they still did not bring any revenue into the city of Helotes. And I think we're really jumping the gun here. I don't think we've got enough information to make a decision at this time.
Well, I don't think anybody's in favor of doing what either one of these two have proposed
Good.
now or later. But is it worth going back and sitting down and talking to the Canvas group or something and see if we can work some out on a monthly basis? Do we even want to do that? That's the question.
Yeah, this was not presented to y'all with my understanding that we had any real information other than we have two entities that want to work with the city of Helotes and the EDC to do business recruitment. If it is something that y'all want to pursue, and again, if y'all don't want to pursue it, that's fine. We would just like to know, hey, from a staff perspective, we want to know the EDC has no tolerance for this. We don't want to do it for the foreseeable future. But if you want to pursue it, then we would go to the negotiation table with whomever and try to work out a deal. And we would, of course, bring it back to the EDC for further discussion.
Rick, I was under the impression during in the RFP that it was either a fee structure or a percentage basis structure. Is that not correct?
It's my understanding, because you drafted it and I reviewed it multiple times, that it was, the preference that we had in there was that it be a percentage-based, proposal. Now, if they came through and said, for every entity that, they could have included or stated in their RFP that if somebody was recruited, we would give them a lump sum of $1,000 or whatever that is. That I still sort of fall into that percentage-based, but what we were trying not to have is, we're gonna pay you $25,000 a year to do something, and there is no incentive for them to bring people in.
Understood.
Yeah. So it could have been a fee or a percentage, or it could have been like a lump sum per entity that they brought in. That would have been in compliance with the RFQ.
Okay.
One of the questions I had several months ago was, has anybody done a study of what the potential of business in city of Helotes is? In other words, how many lots do we have? Where they're valued at? If they secured a client for that particular property, how many properties do they have to sell before they break even, or we break even with them? In other words, does the city have enough potential to hire somebody like this on a direct pay basis? Now, if it's doing on a commission basis, making commission sales, this way you're paying somebody before they offer this product that you want to buy.
And I would say the challenge with the commission sales and what even Retail Strategies mentioned, if you look at it from a realtor perspective, what do you get commission-wise on a home? There's 3% seller and 3% listing. On a commercial property, you have a similar fee structure, but they base it on the lease term. So you have a tenant coming in, signing a 5, 10, 15-year lease. They're getting that 6% over 15 years up front. So the EDC could actually be hit with a $100,000 fee for them bringing one tenant. Exactly.
If the negotiated agreement stipulated that.
Correct.
There are no terms that we have agreed to yet. What we are seeking tonight is whether the EDC wants to have a third party do anything for the EDC in the way of business recruitment. If you don't, and you're happy with Glenn and the efforts that we've made thus far, which, if you're happy with Glenn and the efforts that we've made thus far, I mean, then that's fine. We just need to know that, and we'll not do anything with these guys and just move forward.
Can we have someone, can they pitch their ware to us?
I would, yes. they could certainly come in and do a pitch.
Without us
either-
paying anything?
Yeah, we wouldn't pay them for that.
Right.
Yeah, potential's on their side, not on ours.
What part of the budget does this come out of? What line item?
The retail marketing component.
Pretty good, right?
Retail recruitment at 20 grand?
30,000, wasn't it? 30,000.
Well, you know, what we're talking about here is
Yeah, 20,000.
20,000?
retail strategies,
Where are you looking?
or a spin-off of retail strategies.
Yes, ma'am, that's exactly what that is.
Right, and
exactly
we're
what that
still
is.
going to pay a lot of money. I think we really should consider just postponing this item.
Oh, I agree. But I'd like to hear if there's other companies out there, I'd like to hear what they have to.
Nobody else responded. It's only two responses.
Then I say we
got.
just wait and see what happens, because there's gotta be other companies out there that do
But no,
this.
no,
There are plenty of companies that do it. Buxton's one of the largest in the country. It's a $100,000 fee for their service. So the companies that did respond are the more reasonably priced that do the service.
So if we pay 30,000 over 3 years, that's almost, you're getting. Yeah.
Well, the only option I see we could have on it would be if you want to sit down with Canvas Group or something and talk to them and tell them, look, the only way we're interested in doing it is on a fee basis with no monthly fee or anything else. But then,
Because they haven't
that's no
shown
different
us
than
anything
anybody else. They're
before.
not getting, well, they're getting a little more out of it if they sell something in Helotes that way. They're getting something on top
More
of what they
incentive.
would make in their normal business dealings as a
They're
broker.
good at what they do, to your point.
Right.
Then why would they even want the $30,000 to begin with?
For them, like this particular,
Assurance, that's what it is for them. It's assurance that they've got revenue coming in. What they produce is not, they have no guarantee to produce anything to us.
some of the money on the 30,000 is their upfront study using all their analytical tools they have that they pay license fees. Is that our problem? No, they're already paying the fee. But that's their justification.
Glenn, how much of your time were you spending doing this that we're asking these companies to bid on? I don't know how much of that time, your time, it takes to do that.
Oh, that's a good one. I'd have to put a little thought into, putting a percentage of time spent on retail recruitment.
And the whole thing is, we can't turn that over to somebody else to do and have Glenn not doing it if they're not producing anything, because then we'll be producing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, even when we had retail strategies, that didn't stop us from going to conferences and reaching out. I mean, we still, maybe we took kind of a back seat in some areas, but we still did our due diligence for local stuff. We relied on them.
So you've got
And,
under Section 8 here, a bunch of companies that are, or businesses that are opening up or under construction. How did they come to us?
That's the question right there that I thought about 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah, if I may, y'all are asking, you're asking very good questions, but you're also asking questions that staff can't necessarily answer.
Okay. So all you need to say is whether they came through that type of service or not. If they came to us directly, then
Could come to a
There are-
to a commerce, a city council meeting, it could come anywhere. Word of mouth, anything, they put their logo on there and claim them.
I would say there are 3 businesses that Retail Strategies assisted with. Did they generate the initial lead? That I cannot tell you.
Okay.
I believe 2 of them already had interest in Helotes. They just provided the statistics to them, met with them to try to encourage.
gotcha.
Some of the other ones, like that you were mentioning on Section 8 or Item 8, none of those would have come through Retail Strategies. Those are local contacts or people that just saw the potential in Helotes because a strip center sign went up and they wanted to move out of Leon Valley.
Because it goes back to what we were discussing prior to this section here, where the internal marketing, what are those numbers? So that when businesses approach us, as opposed to having somebody like one of these services here, we hand them that packet and say, here you go. Here's the per capita median, here's the average household income, here's all the information that you
And all
would
of
need
that stuff we're already providing.
Yeah,
So,
so,
We already have it generated.
And
I
you
mean,
get a good
to
realtor to
answer,
close the
to answer
deal.
your question, that would be like if you asked whether economic development has worked in the city of Helotes. Well, the city in 2006 looked nothing like it does in 2018. There's been massive growth all along Bandera Road and in Old Town and on FM 1560 everywhere, correct? So basically, Glenn and I could raise our hands and say, we're responsible for all of that. But you know very well that that's not true. A lot of those businesses would have come to Helotes regardless because
Opportunity.
you have more houses out in this area.
Right.
So I can't answer the question where these people came from. I can tell you that many of the businesses that we have currently in the city that we have met with at ICSC, International Conference of Shopping Centers, in Fort Worth or Dallas and in Las Vegas over the course of years. I mean, developments happen over the course of years, not, oh, we're just going to pick Walmart doesn't come into the city on one trip, if that makes sense. So that question is very difficult to answer, which is why I understand why retail strategies can't necessarily tell you they were responsible for this, and this, and this. They could have had a component to it. They may not have had a component there. So
I guess my follow-up to that would be then, it depends on what our appetite is for expansion, what that strategy looks like, what is it, to determine whether we need a service like this or not. How many businesses are we looking to inject in 2019 and then 2020 and 2021, and where do they reside? That would probably help determine whether we use a service like this or not, or if we need a service like this or not.
And I would like to know how many other people they have pulled this 30,000 from.
Yeah,
You know,
because
how
they're
many
pulling
other-
it together. Yeah, they all
Because
do
if they have
that.
1,000 people to, different places to cover, then we're gonna be low man,
well, I think Retail Strategies has, what, 700 clients?
700?
And the other place is a two-person
700 or
shop, I
800
think you said.
clients. Retail Strategies has. So
Right,
I can tell you the Canvas Group has very few.
Right.
Just because they're going out on their own. But no fault to that, they're a brand-new business, so.
They're probably a little hungrier.
and they're fee-based.
They're looking for 30,000.
They're open for
They're open to
30,000 up front.
They're open to
That's
any.
their seed money right there, so that in order for them to exist as the two-person operation that they are, they need that 30,000 to keep them sustained. That keeps them above water.
Well, they
So they're
have-
willing to forfeit those fees if they get a 15-year lease per se, where, all right, we gave up the 100,000, but at least we're still above water for now. And if they can get multiples in that category where 30,000 here, 30,000 here, 30,000 here, that means they no longer need to go ahead and offer those types of deals. Now they could go to a fee-based structure because that's where they're really going to profit.
What do we let Rick and Glenn negotiate with them and see if they can come up with something just on a fee basis, or just drop the whole thing?
Quite frankly, I think we need to drop the whole thing. We're talking about retail strategies and a spin-off of retail strategies.
Well, if we're not paying them up in front and they're bringing something in and we're paying them for that, that's the change. I'm not talking about paying them $30,000 a year, just if they bring something in.
Well, here's something that's free, to Catherine's point, is why don't we just have them come in and pitch us? There's nothing
like to
that's going to
hear 'em.
hurt.
Well, we need to have staff talk to them first, because if they come in and pitch what they've got in here, it's a no. And I don't want to get into a negotiating session, an open session with a business. That doesn't work when you got 7 people trying to negotiate at one time with one person. Staff needs to see if they can come up with something that is more in line with what we want, and then they can come in and pitch that,
That's okay.
instead of pitching what they've got here.
Sure.
Now, does it have to be according to the budget we have? If they stick with their
Well,
$30,000 pitch, or?
No, it doesn't have to be. If they bring in enough businesses under the thing to pay more, we can move funds out of a different account to pay for it. We can move it out of reserve fund or one of the other designated funds we hadn't spent all the money in. I wouldn't mind doing that at all if they bring enough businesses in that we need to do it.
That's what we want.
But the important thing is whatever service that they're offering has to be aligned with our strategy going forward in the upcoming years. Otherwise, they're offering something that we may not be able to consume.
is there any kind of a spreadsheet or study?
Well, we cannot consume any more than we have property to put it on.
That's what I'm,
Exactly.
So
we're limited there.
this is a annual deal. We're not committing to anything long-term. If they bring in, if something happened, and we developed 80% of the commercial property we have in Helotes that's available within the next year, then of course you have to change your strategies. And you just have to say, look, guys, well, they know what they've got left to sell. They've only got so much out there to push. And if we give them direction on what kind of businesses we're interested in to put on it, we don't necessarily want mini storage units or, you know, what type of business we're interested in that we would like them to approach, then we're within our plan. We don't have a set plan on how much growth we want to have a year.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the amount of business that they are going to generate for us.
Yeah.
My question was, is there a study available out there that a new business that produces $100,000 a year is worth this much to get if that business is projected to be there for 10 years? In other words, do we have a point of return on how much should we invest in a business for X number of dollars? In other words, if you get a Walmart down here, how much is it worth to us to pay somebody to bring a Walmart in?
Yeah,
of
it's
that
based,
size?
it's based upon actual sales that we collect sales tax on.
Right, right.
Yeah, we don't need a study for that. We can do that
Well,
internally.
yeah, so of the vacant lots we've got here, y'all pretty well know what kind of business would go in there.
No,
to some
any
degree?
business can go on them. It could be residential that goes on them. So, I mean, I don't have I think what you're asking about is sort of like a capacity analysis. How much more room do we have and how much potential sales tax we could get on that?
Right. And then for that potential sales tax, how much of that are we gonna pay somebody to get that for us? That's what I was
It would
trying.
be paid out of the sales tax they generate after they open.
Right, right.
So
But
it
we're
would
gonna,
be,
but that's still gonna cost us out of that sales tax.
yeah, but it would not be all the sales tax. It'd be a lesser amount. It'd only be for a set period of time.
Right.
It would be for 1 year or 2 years. It wouldn't be for 5 years or 10 years.
If we paid them $50,000 in the sales tax in 3 years with $75,000, we're not a very good deal. I mean, or I've got the math reversed or something. In other words, where's our return on investment?
We'd only pay them a percentage, a small percentage of what we're drawing in sales tax off of that property.
That's what I'm saying. How
Yeah, we
much is
look at that.
What-
Well,
we have
that
to say
depends
We
on
do
how
look
much
at
they
that.
sell.
Huh?
It just depends on how much they sell. If they sell $10 million and we get
Yeah, but that's not the way this,
50,000, no,
the
that's,
way
we're
this
not
old
talking
contract
about,
works.
we're not talking about using that. That's totally out the window.
so if we're talking
We're
about a
gonna
commission
negotiate with
basis.
them on a fee basis.
Okay, and that, I'm
And
saying,
then
how
determine that.
how do we determine that fee basis? That's what I'm,
Mayor,
question for the future.
To answer your question, sir, if we were to put something like a capacity analysis together, it would be fraught with so many assumptions that I'm not sure it would be valid
Okay.
or valuable. Because we would,
Want to know where's the point of return, how much we're going to get for their dollar.
yeah, the only way that you would be able to determine that is at the point of them coming into the city, the type of business,
Right.
whether it was taxable, non-taxable, and what percentage we're paying to the broker. The other thing is how we pay the broker has to be negotiated as well. Because you can pay them based upon the actual projected sales volume, you can pay them based upon the actual sales volume, but that has to be in arrears. So there's tons of ways to pay them. And all of that needs to be
Figured out.
figured out as a part of this process.
Okay.
And again, what we're asking for tonight is, do we proceed with anything? Or do we have them come make a pitch with something similar to, or something
That we would
closer
like.
to, that we would like, yes.
Will you make your motion?
no motion, no motion,
No motion? Just-
No, we have
No.
to,
We have to have a motion.
we
no.
need a motion, or can we just give staff direction?
Staff direction,
Staff direction.
right, don't you think?
I think direction is fine, but I'd like to know,
Which direction?
well, No, I think we have the direction we need, but I want to make sure that at least a majority of the board members would like to see us move forward in negotiating with Canvas Group.
Let's just go through the list to see.
I mean, that would make me feel better.
Yeah.
Rather,
Right.
Alan?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Does that have to be yes or no, or I ask follow-up questions?
Okay.
Do you want to work with either of those firms?
I am very impressed with Joe Fackel and Bear. They both have, their credentials are stellar. They've worked in retail recruitment and brokerage for a number of years, and they know, in my opinion, they know who they need to talk to, and I'm sure that Director Seitz can attest to this. Real estate is really about relationships, and commercial real estate is probably even more so about relationships than residential, just because it's like a, what do I always say about A&M?
The business
It's-
transaction.
It's a cult. It's kind of like a cult.
Oh, I agree.
So, I mean, I'm impressed with them. I think y'all would be impressed with them. And if we do want to pursue something, I think it would be, I think they're at least worthy of making a pitch to y'all and y'all having a discussion with them.
So you're saying exclusively at this point in time with Canvas Group? Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, then yes.
That would be my opinion, yes. Particularly given the fact that we've had 3 years with retail strategies and little to show of it.
And they were late too on the RFP, or the RFQ, right?
Yeah, and the only one that submitted was the Canvas Group for the RFQ.
No, I say yes.
I say no.
Bill?
We're saying no, I'm sorry.
Yes or no with Rick negotiating with us, see what he can come up
Yes.
with. Kathy?
Yes. And the only reason I say yes is that Bear and, what's his name? Joe, okay. They were on the out when Retail Strategies was working for us. They were already on their way out. So you can't fault them for what the other team was
We
doing.
dealt with Bear for what, a year? Year and a half?
Not even a year with Bear.
Even a year?
I think if you listen to them and they know what we're willing to do, I think we can compromise, but we can see. And maybe they won't.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, okay, so
Could
see
we,
what you can negotiate with them.
It won't
or come
hurt
up
to
with
listen.
them.
could we also get letters from these 3 references that
Yes,
they
ma'am,
listed?
Yes, ma'am.
It's a good idea. Good.
Okay, item 7 is discussion and action on election of officers. We did not go through a formal process with this and do a committee to come up with names. But I think, Kathy, you said you would not mind being secretary,
Secretary would be fine.
and Alan, vice president, unwillingly.
Yes.
And if somebody else wants to president, let me know. Otherwise, I will serve another year and let everybody get their feet on the ground, and then if we want to change, we can change.
Sounds good.
So could we have a motion from 2 members
So moved.
that aren't
Oh, I so move.
Second?
moved and seconded? All in favor?
Aye.
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 He's locked
He's
up.
locked us in. We can't go yet.
I'm going to keep my mouth shut. Okay, item 8 is staff updates, current plan commercial developments within the city. Staff?
So we've got a number of businesses that have opened in the past month. Great Harvest Bread Company, 46th Street Pizza, Pet Barn. I was under the impression the Helotes Gallery opened Friday, but that was a soft, private
Where
opening.
is it?
The Country Elegant, right at the traffic circle, used to be Helotes Marketplace, and then it turned into Country Elegance, and now it is the Helotes
Okay,
Gallery.
I
Done
understand.
by, I think, one of the
Right in the center, right in the.
founders or the Don Darst.
Don Darst.
Okay.
And he's got, what, a
Is that
couple of
right?
partners with him now? Yeah. Three partners.
Nice.
It's gonna be a very nice gallery.
Beautiful property.
Pottery? Y'all need pottery? There you go, we'll talk. I'm a potter.
I can tell you Bandera Road Cafe is currently working on their finish out to relocate their restaurant into the new strip center with the Pet Barn and the 46th Street Pizza and Navy Federal Credit Union. The property across the street, the one that says, oh, sorry, on the sheet below it says Todd Stein. That's the Comerica at Diamond K and Bandera Road.
Oh, that's what's happened to that.
What's happened? Well, they had some delays with weather, but now they're moving full steam ahead. They've got about 6,500 square feet already leased. There's one 2,000 square foot space available. And that's it. And that center's done. Rody Artmers, Siegel was representing Joseph Bitters on a potential development that I believe is kind of put on indefinite hold for now. There's been no action, but when we went to our conference, 90% of the prospects that we met with want to be on that site.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to try to kind of regroup, present a different plan, see if we can get some more buy-in to try to move forward on that.
Which side is that? Which one is that?
That is at Hausman and Bandera. It's 14 acres next door to Pizza Hut.
Okay.
And kind of goes back to the
Yeah,
apartment
oh, yeah,
complex.
We don't have any spiders walking around back there?
No, no.
Okay.
And that's a kind of a unique property anyway. Only about maybe an acre and a half is in the city limits and the rest of it's ETJ.
Yeah.
Good, bad, and indifferent. If the city and I think the EDC were involved in something, we're encouraging them to do a pre-annexation agreement. So upon development, that it would be corporate city limits. I did put on here a couple of the prospects that we've been working with. I know the Judicial Services and the SKA Architecture and Apple Pest, they're looking at doing the first two strictly office, the last one Apple Pest, possibly a mixed-use development here in Helotes. And two of them would be taking advantage of our water and sewer. So those projects were not feasible prior. And then we do have the place, we actually just found out that site is under contract, and that is the old Compass Bank property at the corner of Hausman and Bandera, just
Remaining property.
2.5 acres. That's on the market.
Place, another strip center.
No, the place is a brokerage firm that they used to represent Walgreens, and that's what was intended for that site, and that's why they bought it and
Yeah.
kind of convinced Compass to downsize, and then Walgreens pulled out of the deal. They pulled out of a lot of deals nationwide when it went through a complete restructuring. So now the place was stuck with this property they put millions into, so they've been trying, obviously, maximize their return and find the right developers. And then there's been one business closed in Old Town, and that was Mimi Day Market.
Which one?
Mimi Day
Oh,
Market,
okay.
it was kind of near Pete's Place, at the shops at Old Town.
Yeah.
Property was already leased.
What about Dunkin' Donuts?
I don't know anything at this time, sir.
Okay, you're still
He can't.
looking around?
It's going right over here in the strip center right here. Next year, isn't it? What about that hospital, first aid?
So Mr. Putty was bringing up the First Choice ER that has been closed now for a couple of months at Cedar Trail and Bandera across from Sonic. I do know of one prospect, trying to think of how to say it, has already put an LOI on the property. The letter of interest with an official offer. Thank you. I forget sometimes. The medical RIAT that owns it doesn't know how much they want for the site. They're going kind of through an in-house, trying to appraise it themselves. Don't know if they may have another use for it. They are a medical, it's a real estate investment trust. They only own medical properties across the country. So now that this is closed, it doesn't fit within their, little square. So odds are they're gonna wanna liquidate it. They just don't know the price yet. My understanding, the offer that's been made is a very good offer. The prospect really wants that site. It would be a complete demolish
Wow.
and redevelop.
I've got it, I told you I have that dollar, if it's interesting.
Church's Fried Chicken, eh?
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay.
It's a little out of their price range.
Keep me posted on that, though.
Yeah.
He called me last week and I wanted to know what the status was. Okay.
Glenn, I have a question, please. Was the repavement of Clovis Park Estates as well as some other neighborhoods in town an EDC project?
No.
It was not? Okay.
That was a street maintenance project as a part, and the funding came through the street maintenance sales tax.
Do you know if they're going to finish Diamond K or do Diamond K there behind the strip center?
Yeah, the reason that we did not do Diamond K was because the Bear County project that's doing the French Creek drainage improvements, they're at the intersection of Rockingham and Diamond K. They recently completed that section.
Right.
But at Bar X and Diamond K, they're going to be tearing up that road and putting in larger culverts. And so we didn't want to spend the money on Diamond K until they were done with their improvements so that we can go over and overlay everything and make everything look cohesive and nice and not have to be torn up after we spend money on it. So,
Diamond K, they're planning on actually tearing, kind of doing a street rebuild on that section that's so bad that once this is all finished, what Josh told.
yeah, that'll be a part of our 2019 street
Yeah.
improvements that we do this coming spring and summer.
When is the final repaving of Bar X going to take place?
It is done.
Shit. It's not finished. The roughness, the gravel,
That's just the type of.
everybody's
pavement it
yard, I
is.
know that. We talked about them. They said they were going to fix it eventually. That was like less than a year ago. It's a mess.
I'll need to talk with you about that after the meeting.
Rick, lastly, the paving company did not replace the blue reflectors at the.
Water meter?
At, yeah, at the,
Fire hydrants.
fire hydrants, thank
Fire
you.
hydrant.
At the fire hydrants. They're totally paved over in black.
On all streets?
All streets, none of them that were recently repaved have been replaced.
I don't know if that was in their contract. to
I
do
don't know,
or
that was
not.
my question. It wasn't.
I don't believe that, well, I know that wasn't a part of the contract, including those, and so I'll need to look into that as well
Okay.
to see what we need to do on that. I'm not sure if that's a part of the fire code that we have to have them there.
Well, that's what I was, another question I had, maybe the fire chief should get involved in something like that, or?
They're supposed to be there. The blue
No, I understand,
next to the fire hydrants are supposed to.
yeah, I understand what y'all are referring to. I'll look into it.
And my street light.
I know
It's not, it doesn't, it costs us very little to
Yeah,
put
that's
those in place,
That's a
so.
pretty easy fix.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I think we're through. We are adjourned at
You need to tell him.
8:52.